Steve is one of the founding members of the Libertarian Party of Indiana. He came in the mid-'80s. He has run for office for us at last count 9 times. He is the reason that we have our ballot access from 1994 to this point forward. And he's going to speak, I guess, about 2 things, about normal and about the Fully Informed Jury Association. Steve Dillon, thank you.
Okay, good deal. I'm a lawyer.
Yep, I know that. Good talk.
You know, it's not enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it. And it's not enough to believe in it. One must work at it. Eleanor Roosevelt said that. Action. We've got to take action. We got to work at what we believe in. And I believe in ending the war on drugs. I want peace. Yeah. And we got to work at it if we want peace. I think now is the time to legalize marijuana, and I'm going to talk about Fiji too. I guess I'll talk about Fiji first. She was listed first. I helped start Fiji in Indiana some years ago. I can't remember the exact year. They even got the governor to declare Jury Rights Day on September 5th, way back when. Proclamation. What jury nullification is the opportunity to find somebody not guilty because you have that power in Indiana. It's called jury nullification. There's 3 states that I'm aware of in the United States. What is it? Maryland, Indiana, and Texas or Mississippi. They have nullification in their state constitution. In the Indiana Constitution, it says in all criminal cases, whatever, the jury has the right to determine the law and the facts. That thing about the jury determining the law is what distinguishes these 3 states from the other 47, that the juries in Indiana have the determination of the law and the facts. Now, it sounds pretty simple and it sounds pretty easy. I can tell you as a lawyer for the last 37 years and having done a couple of nullification cases, it's not so easy because the jury is instructed the final time as they go out to the jury room by the judge who tells them, and by the way, Dillon read you the Constitution, Article 1, Section 19, verbatim. However, the Indiana cases had determined that the court's the best source of the law, and you can't ignore, repeal, or excuse somebody just because you don't like it. You should follow the instructions of the court. So I read them the Constitution word for word that tells them that they have the right to do it. But the last thing they hear is the judges telling them, yeah, but you can't really disregard or repeal the law. So that's how tough it is. We have the right. You read the Constitution to him, then the judge, the last one that talks to him, tells him, yeah, but you shouldn't repeal or ignore the law. So you got to win your juries, really, when you pick the jury. You need to get people on a jury who know that marijuana crimes are bad, or whatever crime it is that you're trying to nullify, carrying a gun without a license, or not wearing your seat belts, or other things we libertarians wouldn't agree with. But you got to pick people on the jury that say, yes, I can be fair, I can follow the instructions of the court, but they're the kind of people that have the courage to stand up and say, no, I'm not going to find this person guilty of this because I don't think this is a valid law. And there's no recourse against that juror if they do that. Judge will chew them out maybe, but that's the law. That's what jury nullification is. The Fully Informed Jury Amendment, there's some literature I laid on the table. Just ironically, I did bring some of that today too. And I laid it on the table out there next to my normal information. And I ask you all to help yourself. I'm keeping the pictures. I just kind of laid those out there. But help yourself to all the brochures, both Fiji and normal. What we need to help Fiji in this state is more people willing to pass out information to jurors to make public statements about it so jurors are empowered to do the right thing and say, no, I'm not going to find this poor woman in a wheelchair guilty of marijuana possession because it's the wrong thing to do. I had a case about 10 years ago in Indianapolis, the case of Jeannie Horton, and she called me up and she said, you know, Mr. Dillon, I called National Normal in Washington, D.C., and they told me that you're here in Indianapolis and I've been charged with possession of marijuana. I'm 34. I've had MS for 14 years. I've been in a hospital bed for 9 in the back of my apartment on the north side of Indianapolis. I have MS. I'm in terrible pain. My son's a senior at Pike or some high school in Indianapolis. And he said he talked to his friends and he read some of this normal information about how marijuana might help my MS. And he gave me some. And Mr. Dillon, it was a miracle. I gained 20 pounds. I stopped this wasting. My doctor said I was dying. And I was dying. And I was in depression and had decubine and bed sores. And I haven't walked in 9 years. And horrible depression and pain all the time. And I was dying. And I've gained 20 pounds. And the doctor said it saved my life. Mr. Dillon, can you do something to help me? I can't afford the $50 that the public defender wants me to reimburse him for. I said, I'll do it for free. Jeannie, I'll help you. And but one of the best cases I ever had in 37 years. Didn't make a dime, but let me tell you, what a great case. So, I got Normal to help me. I got the Libertarian Party to help me. And so, I thought, ladies and gentlemen, that when they'd never really proceed with this case. Number one, I've been doing these marijuana cases for a long time, and I'm better than they are at it, frankly. And number two, she's a first offender, 34, in a hospital bed with 2 grams of marijuana. Here's what happened. Her kid's in the front room with a bong and a gram of pot and a buddy, and they're waiting for a third buddy from high school to come, and there's a knock on the door in the apartment. Don't ever do that. Say, come on in. Go to the door. If it's a policeman, don't open it up. But you don't have to open the door. Don't ever open the door to a policeman, especially if you're smoking dope. But they just hate that, or actually they love it. But so he was there. The cop was there in plain clothes to talk to the kid, her son, Jeannie's son, about a gun at Pike High School. And he knew something about it, and he knew that he could help the policeman uncover a gun that would save lives at Pike High School. But when the cop came in the door, come on in, oh no, it's not my buddy, who are you? I'm a cop. What are you doing, smoking a pipe or a bong, He arrested those 2 kids and asked where the parent was. And he said, it's in the back, but don't bother, she's in a hospital bed, she's really sick. He said, well, I'm going to go talk to her. So he goes in the back room, and there's Jeannie, and next to her hospital bed was a little pipe and 2 grams of marijuana. And the policeman says, oh, marijuana, I'm going to arrest you. And she says, you're going to arrest me? I haven't walked in 9 years. What are you going to do? I mean, this is saving my life, officer. So you're not serious. And he said, no, I can't take you to jail. I'll just give you a summons. Get your own self to jail. And then she called me. So I didn't think they'd proceed with a case, not in a million years. So the first time I was set for court, I got him to allow a pretrial without her there, and I went there and talked to the prosecutor and said, you got to drop this case. I mean, this lady's 34, 2 grams of pot, it's saving her life. They walked into her house, she's not bothering anybody, surely you're going to drop it. No, I can't drop it. I talked to my supervisor, talked to his supervisor, he wouldn't drop it. So they scheduled for another pretrial. Second time, I wouldn't bring her. She was supposed to come that time, couldn't do it. How do you get a woman in a hospital bed to court and back? She doesn't have $50. It cost about $1,800 to get a private ambulance to take her in. She only got out of bed twice a year to go to the hospital with a county ambulance, or government paid for it for her medical exams through government something. And so we had to get her to court. I couldn't believe it. I thought, well, this would be it. Well, I rallied the troops. I got the Libertarians and I got the Normal folks together, and we circled the city-county building, and we had 40 or 50 people there, and we had signs, not arms, but we had signs up, and we wore shirts, and we were very vocal, and we did press releases, and we were in the paper, and we were on TV, and we brought the woman into court, and we had to find a way to carry her in her van. We carried her in a wheelchair. Of course, she has no muscles, so we had to hold her up in the wheelchair. When I had her in front of the judge in Court 10 in Indianapolis, her head has no muscles, so I held her head up, and the tears are streaming down her face, and she's crying because this is killing her. She's got decubite bed sores. She's having it in her head, and being in a wheelchair is tearing her up. She's crying in pain. Tears are streaming down her face. I'm holding up her head in front of the judge. The prosecutor's right here. I say, you're going to drop the case now? And the prosecutor laughs at me. He laughed at me. Ladies and gentlemen, zing me right here. Zing me in the heart. I said, jury trial, jury trial, jury trial. I said, okay, jury trial. So And interestingly enough, they interviewed the lady in the hallway, and the prosecutor was interviewed, and they somehow missed me. But I was ready to talk to him, but the last person who wanted on there was me, I guess. But she did a good job talking, and Brizzy or whoever did his job. Against policy, you know, she was having a party. He's having a party. Dying in the back room having a party, but whatever. A bad policy, you know, we're not going to drop this case. So the Star did a poll. Channel 8 did a poll. 80% of the people in Indianapolis, Indiana 10 years ago said, look, if the doctor thinks this lady needs medical marijuana, you better drop the case and leave her alone. The same 80% of the people all over the country in the 15 states that have passed medical marijuana laws, because we're all human, the American people here, and we're compassionate people. You want to lock this woman up for $34,000 a year? It'll cost to lock her up in her first offense at 34 with 2 grams of pot in her own house that saves her life. The paper and the TV were on our side. We felt pretty good. I couldn't believe they're going to go to trial. I'm going to win this case. So you'd think. So the schedule for jury trial, and I got Dr. Bierman from California, a medical marijuana doctor from California. I got other people to testify. I got her doctor in Indianapolis to write a letter to me saying, you know, if she didn't smoke pot, she'd die. The basis of a medical necessity defense, kind of like nullification. If the woman dies, if she doesn't use pot, you can't find her guilty of that crime. It's a medical necessity. Never had one in Indiana before. It took me 3 judges at pretrial hearings before the trial date was set, before I could get the 3rd judge to finally allow defense of medical necessity with a letter from the doctor saying it'll save her life. She'll die if she doesn't smoke pot. I can't prescribe it, but if she doesn't use it, she'll die. That's the basis for a medical necessity defense. I didn't even got to nullification yet, but it's just, I was going to do that too. But so it's scheduled for trial, and they called us on Friday before the trial on Monday to confirm we're going to be ready. This time I had a buddy, and he actually had worked for the coroner's office and had a way to, he said, look, we'll use the ambulance and get her to bring her in. So we did that. They used the Marion County coroner's ambulance to bring her to court, and I saved her the $1,800 and didn't tear up so bad. But you know, we get to court and they say, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Dillon, there's a problem. I said, what do you mean? You called Friday, we're all here, the experts here from California, we're ready to roll. Oh no, we can't get a jury. I said, 6 people? You have 300 down in the public assembly room for jury trial down there. You send them up, I've been in this process. They send 30 people to 10 different courtrooms. I'll take the first 6. I don't even want to talk to them. I don't care. I'll take 6 people. Nope, we can't get 6 out of 300, Dillon. We got to call off the trial. The paper was there. Everybody's ready to go. They saw that I was going to win. I had the judge from the jury poll sworn under oath to testify under oath that they couldn't get 6 people out of 300 for our jury that day, and they called off the trial and they scheduled it. And they did that to Jamie, and I had to send which I paid the doctor out of my pocket to come from California, but he's a normal guy, so he didn't charge me much. And my golly, they scheduled the trial again. And in the meantime, I got permission and had a hearing to have her testify in front of the jury from her hospital bed.
Oh, right.
Now, tell me about a nullification case that couldn't be better than this if they didn't buy medical necessity, had a shot at nullification. Here's a woman in a hospital bed in front of you with 2 grams of pot who's dying, and that saves her life. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find her not guilty. At least one of you people could not find her guilty of this crime. But, and they confirmed on Friday the jury trial the 2nd time, and this time the doctor couldn't come back, and I used a deposition instead of his testimony to present to the jury. And the paper was there again, and everybody's in support, and that, you know, we got people around the city-county building again, passing out FIJA flyers outside the courthouse about the rights of citizens to find people not guilty. And they said, oh, Mr. Dillon, I know it's ready for trial, but there's another problem. I said, what's that? And they said, we don't have a room this time. We got a jury, we can find 6 people, but we can't, we don't have a room to have her testify in front of her hospital, in her hospital bed, so we can have the jury trial without your client. And I said, well, you know, I've never done a jury trial without my client present, except the one that was tried in absentia. But I said, no, she's here, and no, we're not going to give up our trial rights. We want our jury trial in her hospital bed in front of the jury. And they said, well, we're calling off the trial again. Oh, man, I couldn't believe this. They knew I was going to win. They didn't want me to establish precedent for medical necessity in the state on Jeannie Horton's case. Again, the paper's all in support, even in Indianapolis, for medical marijuana patient in this case. So what happens? Well, in the intervening time, I won a burglary trial in court 2. The guy was guilty as hell, but they couldn't prove the case. That's just the way it works. I don't support the behavior, but I do my job as an advocate, and they didn't prove their case. He was found not guilty. And I just happened that one time in my whole life as a lawyer in Indianapolis to go down the elevator with the prosecutor, just him and me. And he said, "Oh, Dillon, I hear you won a trial in court 2 last week." And I said, "Yeah." And I shook his hand and said, "Yeah, but I don't care about that case. It's that medical marijuana case that I care about, Mr. Prosecutor." And he said, "Oh, it's bad policy." And I said, "You know," I just called him a really dirty name. Some kind of fucker. And some kind of fucker. A dog fucker, a cat, I don't know, it was a weird fucker. And he had this phrase, it was just him and me in the elevator, you know. And he had this shocked look, and nobody ever called him a whatever fucker it was. And I like dogs, so what is a dog for? But anyway, so he just kind of shook his head, and his office called me the next day and said, "Would she have a diversion and take probation?" I said, "Hell no." And they called back and said, "Well, how about we just drop the case?" And I said, "Only if you agree that she can continue to use her marijuana." Can't touch that thing. Only if you don't bother her, she can smoke her pot in peace, and they even agreed to that, off the record, of course. So, but, you know, and I really wanted the case to go to trial, but it was my client's decision. I represent my client. And I said, "Jeannie, we got to take this to trial to help everybody in the state." And she cried and said, "But Mr. Dillon, they're going to leave me alone, and, you know, it just kills me so bad to go to court, and they're putting pressure on my son, and at school, I got to let the case drop." And so I did. But that just tells you an example of how FIJA works and how compassionate the people in Indiana really are. And it also tells you a little bit about the criminal justice system, doesn't it? You know, I was a lawyer when I was in law school. I thought that fair and legal were two birds that flew together at every swoop. And after I've been doing this since '74, I've decided that, you know, they're two birds that occasionally will swoop together, but, you know, usually they're not even in the same area or flying in the same direction. Legal doesn't mean fair. You gotta work at it. You gotta work at it. Anyway, that's the FIJA part, and it overlaps, as you can see. But I wanted you to hear that medical marijuana story. I'll talk at the end. I'm going to talk a little bit in a presentation that I give often about the national marijuana movement, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Indiana at the end, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes for questions. Now is the time to legalize. Just say now. Just say now. 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 Or yes, we cannabis. That's a phrase I like. You know, earlier in the Obama administration, I said that quite a bit. Yes, we cannabis. Now is the time to legalize cultivation, possession, and use of marijuana by responsible adults. The time is right now. I'm honored to be here with you today. I'm one of you. I missed you. I've been gone for a while. Hope to see you again sooner. The majority of the public, almost, we're at 48, 49% in the Pew polls, the recent polls. We have risen from about 20 or 30% for marijuana, to legalize marijuana in this country in the polls when I started working in this area in '73, up to, it's right at the breaking point, about 49%. Now, it's a vast majority of the people in this country believe we ought to have medical marijuana, and a vast majority of the people in this country believe it should be decriminalized. I'm talking about total legalizations at 49%. So, we are going to the point where it's going to be legal within, I'll say 5 years. Keith Strock told me that in '73. I believed him. I'll say it now. In April 2010, there was a poll by Angus Reid Company, and they're the ones that said it's gone from about 30% even just a few years ago to about 50% in 2010. We've spent $1 trillion of our dollars on the drug war since 1988. And the drug war started, you know, basically with Nixon. A costly failure and hundreds of thousands of lives lost, according to Martha Mendoza, the Associated Press, May 16, 2010. Even drug czar, how American is czar anyway? Czar Gil Kurlikowski concedes, quote, in the grand scheme, the strategy, has not been successful. President Obama, by the way, promised in May to, quote, reduce, that was last May, reduce drug use and the great damage it causes, quote, with a new national policy that treats drug use more as a public health issue and focuses on prevention and treatment. But ladies and gentlemen, that's a lie. That's a lie, because the government has increased spending on drug arrests and prosecutions in this country. It's to a record level of $15.5 billion this year. So even though they say the strategy doesn't work, it's not right, we got to consider other options, we got to focus on treatment instead of incarceration, they haven't shifted the percentage of incarceration to treatment, and they've increased the drug budget by about another 20 or 30% to about $16 billion a year. Damn, can't trust either one of those kinds of presidents, can you? 2/3 law enforcement, only 1/3 prevention. Same ratio as before. He isn't doing any more to treat anything, and he's still wasting all of our money. Kurlikowski admits that the drug budget hasn't shifted as much as it should. It shouldn't shifted at all. It increased. It's terrible. You know, and the government spent $33 billion in Just Say No messages in the last year. Those don't work. Don't work. You know, they have higher incident of drug abuse among children in DARE schools than non-DARE schools. Even the government will admit that finally. 33 billion in Just Say No style messages. 25 million Americans use illegal drugs. 37 million nonviolent drug offenders arrested. 37 million nonviolent drug offenders arrested since 1988. 22 million just marijuana offenses and arrests since 1970. In 2009, 1/2 of all federal prisoners are in prison for drug offenses. 1 out of 8 people in prison are there for marijuana offenses. The Justice Department says the consequences of drug abuse are, quote, an overburdened justice system, a strained healthcare system, lost productivity, and environmental destruction, which cost us $215 billion a year. As Harvard professor Jeffrey Myron points out, current policy is not having an effect on reducing drug use, but is costing the public a fortune. The only sure things that taxpayers get for more spending on police and soldiers is more homicides. The federal prosecutor said we can't prosecute all the drug cases we want to. We didn't file 7,483 drug cases last year because we don't have the time and money to keep busting everybody for it, but still, you know, half of them are there for drug offenses. $320 billion annual global drug industry. That's what we have here. It's a big industry. It's 1% of all commerce in this country. That consensus is growing around the country that at least marijuana will someday be regulated and sold like tobacco and alcohol. Americans now believe marijuana is safer than alcohol. There's a great campaign called Safer that points it out, and points out that people die 2,000 a year from aspirin, and 50,000 a year from alcohol, and 0 a year from marijuana. So it is true, and people know that, because they've tried it, and they didn't go into cocaine, they didn't go into violence, they didn't grow breasts, they didn't go sterile, they didn't go blind. They know that. Medical marijuana is legal in 15 states in this country. It's about half the population of the country has medical marijuana. The first was California in '96, followed by Alaska, Colorado, Hawaii, Maine, Michigan, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, New Jersey, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, Washington, D.C. It's not a state, but that would be 16 with them. And in other states, a dozen more have ballot measures pending in various places to have medical marijuana. All around Indiana, they're making reforms on marijuana, while Indiana wants to increase prisons and add more time to people. You know, Jeffrey Myron from Harvard said that we could tax marijuana and make $7 billion a year and stop spending that 15-some billion dollars a year, and then we're getting like 20-some, $30 billion a year, you know, 30 billion here, 30 billion there. You're getting up to real money, especially, you know, in times like this. What about the kids? Can we spend that money on something else? How about the kids, you know? Education or something. Security. Reduce taxes. Politicians are coming around. Ron Paul, Barney Frank, Gary Johnson. I introduced him to the Libertarian State Convention. Republican governor from New Mexico. I think he's running for president against a Republican, and he wants to legalize marijuana. He said it's, it's the only danger of marijuana is to a bag of potato chips. Barney Frank said last year, it's time, quote, it's time to bring sanity to federal marijuana laws. We should stop treating people as criminals because they smoke marijuana. The problem is the political will. Politicians are afraid of being portrayed soft on drugs. And that's exactly what happened in Indiana this year, but I'll get back to that. The prohibitions don't work in general. 1937, there was 5,000 marijuana users in the whole country. Last year, there was 25 million, and that's conservative figures. So if you have a prohibition and increasingly gets stronger and stronger, and it goes from 5,000 users to 25 million users, you think that policy is really not too effective. Prohibitions just don't work on us Americans. We Americans believe we have the right, we're libertarians, all of us really. We believe we have the right to swing our fist in any direction as long as we don't hit anybody else in the nose. That's what I think. Now, I know Abe Lincoln reminds us that prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason, that attempts to control a man's appetite by legislation and makes a crime out of things which aren't crimes. A prohibition strikes a blow at the very principles upon which our government was founded. Thomas Jefferson, the guy in these $2 bills I carry around, says that the freedom and happiness of man are the sole objects of all legitimate government. Einstein, he was a bright guy, he said that nothing is more destructive of respect for the government and the laws of the land than passing laws which can't be enforced. The marijuana laws can't be enforced any better than the alcohol laws will, because we're Americans and we can swing our fist in any direction. We just need to be responsible about it. Just say now, it's time for our government to end the insane, immoral, expensive, counterproductive war on marijuana and us. It's really a war on us and our rights. The war is not on marijuana, it's us. We're going to jail. We're getting arrested. 872,000 people last year in this country. 90% for less than an ounce of pot. Mostly young people and minorities. It's racially based in many instances. The government's not stopping, by the way. You got to force the government to do something. They don't want to do the right thing unless they're made to do it. So we got to take that action and make them do it. Let me read you something from the Hopi elders. I believe in Native American wisdom a great deal. Indiana, land of the Indians, From the Hopi elders. You have been telling the people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour. Here are the things that must be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It's time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside yourself for the leader. This could be a good time. There's a river flowing now very fast, and it is so great and swift that there's those that will be afraid. And they will try to hold on to the shore, and they will feel like they're being torn apart, and they will suffer greatly. But know the river has its destination. The elders say, you must let go of the shore, push off toward the middle of the river. Keep our eyes open and our heads above the water, and see who is there with you, and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time of the lonely wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and vocabulary. All that we do must be done in sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are the ones, ladies and gentlemen, to make the change. We can't let somebody else do it. We need to run for office. We need to give our money. We need to stand up and talk truth to power. We need to make a point about liberty and freedom. We need to talk to everybody we can. We can't let somebody else know we aren't alone. We're the majority. We're on the right side. We're on the right side of this issue. We have the truth on our side. The government lies. The days of fear, hate, and greed are over. We must let our representatives know that we demand change now. And it's okay for them to vote the right way and do what they should do and change these bad laws. Margaret Mead said to never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. This room can change the world. Simon Wiesenthal said that freedom's not a gift from God. If you want freedom, you must work for it every day. I mentioned that earlier this morning, but I say that about every day. Thomas Jefferson reminds us that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. And I look forward to working with all of you in this battle for liberty, because that's what it's about. Let this be the time. Just say now. Now. We will be glad we spoke truth to power and stood up for our rights and helped end this insane war on marijuana and our rights and liberties. That's what it's about. Doesn't matter if you smoke pot. Thank you for attending. Thank you for listening, helping reignite these flames of liberty and justice. And I would ask you, I'm going to talk some more to you, but I want to say that let us go forth from this place today, committed anew to the cause of liberty and freedom for all people, that next year we get together, we may celebrate a world made better by our efforts. Thank you.